Hello and most welcome to 817 of the series. And we once more have been having very clement weather here in the island of Hisingen, a little bit outside of Gothenburg proper. It's around 3:30. I'll keep it short, but this is a lecture long due. Actually, I have been wanting to make it for at least 3-4 years, I think. But I did not have the proper knowledge, vocabulary, and I had just a hunch that this was very important. And of course, I read about it, especially in Jacques Derrida's Dissemination, and also some hints of it in other literature. But it is the real and the unreal, maybe one of the most important binary oppositions in Western metaphysics, might be the very most important one. And it's a division. First something get divided somewhere. How is never mentioned. In what way is neither mentioned, but the divide is always already there. It is like it's never not been there. And that is important to remember. It has always been there. It is, one could say in some easier term, sort of self-evident, although it's not correct to say that. That could give you a hint. Let me first sketch up the two sides of the binary opposition, the divide. One could actually say that one side of the divide, the prioritized, is a sort of institutionalized thing. We divide it and we just call it the first paragraph here, the thing. And that's institutionalized. It could be said to be what we say in Swedish, svanenmärk. That is similar to fair trade marked or good for the environment mark one often find in commodities in the superstore. It is signed by different perceived absent authorities, maybe something in the vicinity of classical physics, Dawkins, Hawking, general perception, common sense, I'd say as well, and it's most ingrained, maybe not so much in actual language, but it's ingrained in language use. The way we are using language could be pointing in this direction, but the pointing is shallow. It's not a sharp pointing. That's what I say. That's what I mean when I say it's always already established. It's always already been there. And since it's always already been there, what is the reason to point it out? That would actually imply some sort of intention or will from a person, a being, or what have you. It's important. This establishment does not and is not and was not caused by willing. It is not caused by the act of intending, intention. Could say it's intentionless. And that becomes some sort of property. That's the good thing. It's intentionless. That is similar to what you look for if you want to put a fair trade sign on a commodity, merchandise, maybe some coffee. You look for intention, and if you can't find an intention, it can actually be stamped, this is the real McCoy. That's the real thing. Below we have the other thing, the thing that is not stamped, it has not been approved. These are either construed by seeing what is approved in the act of division. This becomes the untrue automatically. It becomes absent, it's not here, and that means absent in the sense of not being present in the now. Now and here. These are pure fantasies, these are nonsense, Walt Disney, the unreal, and this means conjured, and I think that's a good word. It means made up intentionally or by force, a willingness. Not always. These are willed by intention. And it's interesting here because that characteristic sort of hides itself. But I would say it's an important property to make the divide once it's already made. Indirectly, we would say a very good proof of it being on the marginalized end is that there is some sort of intention here or willingness. And the good stuff, not in all cases you find a willingness, and that proves to this side this is an arbitrary characteristics. You can get away with that. And I think that could be very, very helpful for the prioritizing power. They could say it's not so simple, it's made up. It's not so simple, there is an intention. Therefore, you can really hide away intention from all of humanity because you don't even accuse the other side of having necessary trait of intention. Because if they would that, they would bring this nasty thing called intention into the game. And I don't think they want to do that. That doesn't serve the purpose. It should be cut in stone. And this I calculated here, this I draw, this I characterized is the very foundation of Western metaphysics. This is the reason I've been wanting to have this lecture for such a long time. But it did not become obviously clear before the meeting we had last week, Tuesday the 8th, and until I had a chance to really delve into the most marvelous book of Rudolf Gachet. Thank you very much. You know who you are, who brought that book. That was an incredible strike of luck. Now it's clearer. Well, now we can name them. We don't have to use the word thing. And we can call this reality, the real McCoy, the approved reality. And this is what is not reality. And we only have two sides, and they stand in contradiction to each other. We do not have neither nor, and we don't have not and both. Another important limitation, unspoken of. If it would have been spoken, it would have been pointed out, and then it would have been obvious. Remember the magician. His job is not to trick you, but to take away your attention. Afterwards, you would say, that was trickery, that was magic. But there was not any magic going on. It was a movement of attention, and this is a movement of intention. This is the movement that makes for ontology, or ontic movement, as Martin Heidegger would have said. This is the very establishing movement. And remember, it's a movement that hides the fact that it is a movement. Movement, intention are, as you know, very much the same thing in some senses. And I would say this is also, here comes another approach. I would say this is the reason we have those problems we have in modern Western civilization. Things that we usually call stress, anxiety, depression, lack of intention, because this takes away intention from the world. Or at least, like the magician, hides it. Look here. Do not look here. Here. Put your attention here. And taking away the finger gives you less chance of regulating your attention. How many magicians today use the finger? I would say none. That we did as kids. It's not enough to trick anyone using the finger, because then you understand there is an intention. And you can look all the way from the index finger, following the radius and the ulna, the upper arm, and it goes to a person. I start to think here about Escher and his hand drawing a hand. This is exactly what he meant. And when we start to ask ourselves, what did it start with? Which hand began to draw? You see, here the problem starts. Is this unholy, turned holy division between original and copy? Who was the originator? Was it the chicken or the egg? Was it one hand that started to draw the other hand? It's more than enough just to put that question in your mind, and your attention has been drawn. from reality to the trickery. No, a modern magician don't use fingers because they are tells. And that's why it's so convenient that actually in some of these cases you can't easily find an intention, a creation. It's assumed that pure fantasies just exist. One could say it's a magical movement to eradicate will, but that's putting the things in the wrong order. The lack of will could be caused by this traumatic incidents, maybe 2,500 years ago. That might be a better way of looking at it, instead of thinking it was a willful idea of getting rid of intention, of meaning. Go to any bookshop. I went to Pocket Shop the other day. You have a large section of fiction and a not so large section of non-fiction. That divide goes for everything. Fiction is the lesser, it's the more entertaining, of course, the bigger section in a pocket shop, but non-fiction is the most important. It's not fake. This divide makes it very hard to function in a smooth, flexible, malleable, adjustable way. Everyone makes their own subjective, emotionally based division, and it's never the same because nobody ever pointed the division out. It's not even certain it can be made. Of course, we can say that there are some true properties to this reality, this we can touch, this usually we cannot touch. And that went over and caused havoc in the body-mind system. What we think is less than what we do. Action speaks higher than thinking. You see here, it's getting more and more established. Our thinking in the end becomes something absent, not present. And we are locking out our own thinking processes out of our mind. And here I come to a fellow called Martin L. Rossman, an MD, written a book about how to take control of your own thinking. Well, I would say this has to start with this. You need to understand that your thinking is as real as anything else, and anything else is as fantasy as your thinking. The division is unlawful. It doesn't make much of a sense, but you need to understand that yourself. You cannot let somebody, not even Derrida, convince you that is the case. You need to know that yourself. Find it out for yourself. Martin L. Rossman points out very few people today have an idea of how important our imagination is. And we lack capabilities to imagine well. To imagine well is the very same thing as to prepare for action. To prepare for good action. And that imagination is what tells what quality that action will have. How high up the scale will it be? How functional will it be? Will it serve your needs? So imagination is very much connected to action. And we mentioned that earlier with Jeffrey Schwartz, and this with the cerebellum. How important the cerebellum is to make thinking smooth, because thinking is action. And this division is like putting or throwing a wrench into the machinery. It makes it move much less smoothly. And that goes for body/mind at the very same time, because they are complementary. At some views they are completely different and of different material. One is more substantial, one is more material, the other one is lighter. But to put a huge divide, that is not going to do the trick. That's a little bit like having a standardized map that signifies each and every town on earth, and use that map as guidance when you want to get around somewhere. It will not do the trick. And usually we do the same divide as dear old James Locke did. It's second order properties and first order properties. First order properties are out there. This is usually reality. Reality is out there. It has extension, length, breadth, width, mass, force. Whereas in this side, the division is color, sensory perception, palpation, color, smell. That is the lower end of the scale. And of course, it's not hard to see that after James Locke, art fell into the abyss of being just a mere copy. It's no coincidence. This is the beginning of the end of the very end of the Renaissance. Nobody would like to pay a lot of money for falsehood, like a painting. This is not a true picture of Paris. This is not Montmartre. This is an image of Montmartre. Not as good, of lower value. Nobody paid the equivalents of a house for painting anymore. The outside became more important. And once it was well established, we got a whole system. And this system told us how everything was built up of the things outside. These are the building blocks. These are the atoms that build up this, because they build up our brain, and in the brain their fantasies evolve. And for some mad reason, even if we accept that, somewhere on the way, fantasies become something less. But they're coming from here. There is a paradox lurking about there. And I'd say there is a heap of paradoxes, and they are all very helpful to sort of smoothen and making this not as sharp and sticky. And of course, this is connection also when we start to thinking ourselves made from outside matter, of the greater thing, we become ourself a subject, an ego, an I in this system. And this I has perceptions, it has experience. The experience that the I has is second hand. It's never as real as the actual reality. What is happening? Well, once more, I look into the mirror, and by looking into the mirror, I realize what is looking into the mirror is more real than the mirror image. Helpful to lead you more into this thinking. And that means that your experience is second hand. It's debased experienced. It's not the real McCoy. You don't have access to reality anymore. And the only thing the subject can do is to own indirect details from this world, these shadow figures, and he can gather them, put them into the mind, store them. You see here why we have representationalism and the idea of memory as a storage point. Memory, remember, is a new thing. Memory didn't used to be an actual property. And as Jeremy Schwartz pointed out, memory is not something that can be found in the point of the brain. It's all over the brain, all over the system, and it's in the movement. I would say representationalism, then you are already out of sync with reality. You don't move in the same pace as reality. You move one step behind. Because if you are this subject perceiving things from the outside, the real world, you will be 1 second too late. Because light needs to come into your eyes and to give a picture of the real outside. And you are not close to the outside either. And you can only see the surface on the outside. So in the end, this is telling you experience is not real. Well, isn't that a problem? What is real? Well, something beyond experience. And I hope that now you will be able to perceive this to be problematic. Of course, you have to do this excursion, this investigation yourself, but I hope I led you to the idea this is problematic when experience is not real. That could be the greatest paradox of all. And it is not easily solved, but it is easily expressed. And that is what I wanted to do with this lecture, long awaited. I'm really happy that I finally could record this lecture just before everything happens all of a sudden, and there's going to be a great change of everything. This happens. So happy. Next time I will probably be somewhere else. And I say thank you very much for your patience. So lucky to get here at 817. And I'll be sure to come back to this. I wish you a very pleasant afternoon. Bye bye.